underway again. So we're on to item 8 in our agenda. So we have public input period. Staff has indicated there, and there's nobody registered this evening. We did number 7. Yeah. That's okay. And we can call the question on it again, but so we're on to again public input. So has anybody registered since we had our technical delay? And member in the gallery this evening, public input? No. Okay. So it moves us on to item 9 of our agenda. So under legislative matters, so we have 9A, which is bylaw number 266. I'll just make the motion that the District of Lantzville miscellaneous fees and charges bylaw number 26-2004, amendment bylaw number 266-2022 be adopted. Is there a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Gesselbrecht. It's for adoption, so there's no debate. I will simply call the question. All those in favor and opposed, and noting Councillor Savage is opposed, it carries. Takes us on to bylaw number 304. So I'll make the motion again that the District of Lantzville Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy bylaw number 109, 2014, amendment bylaw number 304, 2022 be adopted. Seconded by Councillor Gesselbrecht. I will again call the question. All those in favor and opposed, noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, it carries. That takes us on to item 12 of our agenda. So now we're under new business. So we have Mayor and Councillor verbal updates. So we can start with Councillor Gesselbrecht tonight if he wishes.
Could you skip me right now? I'm just trying to find my paper on this.
Okay, and through to Councillor Proctor. Councillor Savage.
No updates for me tonight, thank you.
Councillor Wilson. Okay, and I have nothing for myself this evening, and so back to you, Councillor Gesselbrecht.
Yes, thank you. This is to advise that several members of our council will be going to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Community Convention, which hasn't been held live for the last 2 years. It will be a live event starting April 1st down in Victoria. This is an important organization that includes all of the communities on Vancouver Island, as well as other the islands such as Gabriola and Powell River, Kahat, and it gives the representatives of these various communities the opportunity to engage in various seminars regarding municipal First Nation relationship, how to move forward. As well, there are a number of resolutions that are brought forward by the municipalities as well as regional districts. There's quite a range of these resolutions, which, if passed, are sent to the Union of BC Municipalities, which meeting will be later in the year. And once again, both of these groups are advocacy groups so that municipalities can get their concerns to the provincial government. A lot of issues, a lot of resolutions are going forward concerning housing, guaranteed minimum income, changes to the Local Government Act, a proposal that more monies will come to municipalities through taxation, such as cannabis sales, such as royalties on timber sales. And this will be held over 3 days. And at the end of it, these recommendations, as I mentioned, will be presented to the UBCM convention, at which time there will also be provincial government ministers and other staff present to hear some of the concerns of our communities. Thank you.
Okay, and so that concludes mayor and council verbal updates. So that takes us on to item 12B. So we have the Regional District Nanaimo Board. So I gave notice regarding this on March 9th, 2022. I'll simply make the motion. Actually, before I make the motion, I don't know if anybody of council is interested in the alternate position. Okay, hearing nobody. All right, I'll just make the motion that pursuant to the Local Government Act, council appoint Councillor Ian Savage as the District of Lantzville Municipal Director on the Regional District Nanaimo Board, and further that pursuant to the Local Government Act, council appoints Councillor Proctor as the District of Lantzville Alternate Municipal Director on the Regional District Nanaimo Board. Do I have a seconder for that? Okay, seconded by Councillor Savage. I'll speak to this real briefly. At this point in the term, I think it's appropriate that we look to extending the invitation to sharing this role as a municipal director on RDN to another member of this council. And at this point, I feel that Councillor Savage is probably the most suited to doing this, has experience to move into the role, and I'll let him speak to it more, why he should be considered for this position as a seconder. So through to you, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, my understanding is when we switched our RDN representative, the idea was so we could all have a turn and get the experience of the most current RDN issues. And we're now about at the halfway mark since Councillor Gesselbrack was appointed. So I'll gladly accept the position for the final 6 months. And yes, while I've served as regional district director in the past, it's always good to get caught up with the current issues and the current directors as well. On a sad note, the last director I served with that was currently on the board passed away, Maureen Young, Area C, so that's too bad, very nice lady. So this will mean that basically Councillor Gesselbrack and I will have equally shared the amount of time. So that's basically it in a nutshell, the main concept behind it. And as I say, I'd be happy to accept. Thank you.
Okay, additional speakers on this? Okay, and just as an additional comment, you know, making this this motion and considering it, you know, I have considered also the impact to the board on this, and the conclusion I've arrived at is it's a 19-member board, and I think as cycling another councillor into this role is not going to be disruptive. I think in terms of probably how it should work in the future, and I spoke to this last time, is that it should be an elected position. So it's not any member of the council or including mayor. Essentially, it would be an additional elected position, and that discussion has occurred in the past. I think it might even be proposed at a past UBCM. So, you know, taking that into consideration, I don't personally think it's going to be too disruptive. I do think, you know, at the regional board, they often do look at the mayor as being that spokesperson of the municipality. Oh, hold on, you're pulling my microphone away. And so I think in terms of representation of the community as a whole, I believe that's for municipalities, that generally that position works best. But again, every municipality has to function independently and make their own decisions. All right, so unless there's anything further, I will move to calling the question. Did you something else? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yeah, there's just one other point, and that's Society of Continuity. I will be running for election again. So It would be nice if there's a person that is served with the current board that can step right into it again, or more than one person on the future council. And that is important, because if there's no one that served on it before, that can become problematic. It's certainly a learning curve, and if there's important issues right at the start, we don't want to miss out on that. So that's another factor for consideration again. Thank you.
Okay, unless there's anything further, I will move to calling the question. Okay, hearing or seeing nothing, I will move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed, knowing that Councillor Proctor, Councillor Gelsebrek, and Councillor Wilson are opposed, the motion fails. All right, so that takes us on to item right here, 12C. So this is the Pierce Woods Marine Park. So I have enacted Section 131 of the Community Charter to consider this, or to reconsider this motion. So there's no mover or seconder required. Have this motion on the floor for the benefit of the viewership. I will simply read the motion. So that the 2022 to 2023 financial plan be amended to bring forward the 75,000 budgeted funds for Pierce Woods Marine Park Master Plan in 2023 to be undertaken in 2022. And further, that staff develop a terms of reference, including the public input portion of the consultant's work to be done when the public can access the property, to come back to council for their consideration, and for authorization for staff to engage a consultant. So that's the motion that's on the floor. So I do have a recommendation below it in the agenda, so I will move to making that recommendation. That the motion on the floor be amended by striking "to be undertaken in 2022" and inserting "to fund a Parks and Trails Master Plan, including the Pierce Woods Marine Park, for the work to commence in 2022, and further that 25,000 from the Community Works Fund, open bracket, gas tax, close bracket, be added to the funding for a Parks and Trails Master Plan in the total amount of $100,000, and striking access to property and inserting access the Pierce Woods Marine Park property. So that is the recommendation, or the amendment recommendation. Is there a seconder to that? So second by Councillor Savage. So for discussion, after that motion had been passed, and it was unanimous, and we had a good debate on it, and I think we had some council consensus struck on that. I did walk away, and personally I thought that is probably not the best direction to go in terms of planning our parks. So $75,000 is a large sum of money to essentially devote to such a small park. I don't think you'd see this done anywhere else. And you know, in terms of the actual plan that would be left with afterwards, it still leaves the rest of our parks and trail systems unattended to in terms of from a planning perspective. In our agendas this evening, that's what I did request, pardon me, that we have those two plans. So we had the Parks and Trails Recreation Plan, which was dated March 2008, and the Trails and Journeyways Strategic Plan or strategy from November 2010, included in our agenda. And the reason why I asked to have these included was essentially to give council some background in terms of other parks and trails initiatives that have been taken on in the past that have become, in my opinion, outdated and also are somewhat overlapping. So I think at this point in time, noting that, you know, we have the foothills on the horizon. Oh, you keep stealing my microphone. They're tethered together. Whoa. Sorry for the technical interruption there. Got disconnected. So, yeah, where I was going with the foothills was there was a recent press release or press article done on March 7th with respect to the foothills and moving forward with requests for increased density and so forth. But what comes along with that is, again, more discussions around parkland and so forth. So I think we're at a real critical time where we have to look at our park system on a whole within Lantzville and come up with a collective plan that deals with everything, not just the Pierce Woods Marine Park. So I think by adding the $25,000 to the total funding, what we'll end up getting is an updated document that's comprehensive to all the parks and trails within the district of Lantzville. So I hope council will support it for those reasons. So through to the seconder, and then we'll open it to the rest of the council.
Yes, thank you. This to me solves the problem of the enormous money for one park. It does make sense an overall parks plan considering the connectivity of all our lands. And even with this park, there's issues outside the new waterfront park in terms of transportation and parking off-site and so on. So it really does make sense. Plus the foothills is upcoming. It allows us to get a head start on some of the basic approaches to the park, even considering perhaps a committee specific just to that park, it's so big. But we were lucky to get the waterfront park because it came out of the blue, but it might be a little more beneficial if we thought ahead about some key pieces of land which will likely be upcoming for development proposals, which could fit into a network of green space. And we had just started this exercise of updating the whole parks master plan when the Parks Committee got hit with COVID. So it really stopped, it's dead in its tracks just after a few months of meetings. So, and I still find the consultant price far too high, but I'm willing to give the process a chance. And yes, as Mayor Swain says, we already have the Parks and Trails plan and a second one in 2010 to build upon. So this will reduce the workload, not starting from scratch. Plus residents themselves have great knowledge of a lot of the areas. So we're already starting from a head start on a comprehensive plan. It won't be that much work as opposed to starting from scratch. And I see the consultant's role simply as coordinating all the information into a cohesive plan. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Proctor.
I think this is a really good idea because those two plans are very outdated. The Parks Trails plan and the Trails and Journeyways strategy. But I'm wondering if you're thinking that this additional 25,000 would be enough to also cover the 1,000 acre Foothills Park. The way I read your motion, I didn't think it was included. I'm wondering what your intention was.
Well, the intention would be to do a parks master plan for the entirety of Lantzville. So we already have acquired parkland through the foothills. We already have 730 acres. There's more to come as discussions move forward with the phase development agreement and so forth. Yeah, so this would be inclusive for all of Lantzville. But again, what would be coming back to council at some point would be a terms of reference for the actual parks master plan, parks and trails master plan. So it wouldn't just be limited to any singular park or trail system.
I appreciate that, and I look forward to reviewing the terms of reference. My only concern is that 25,000 extra wouldn't be enough to cover planning that whole Foothills Park. I envision that being, that's a big park. That's Stanley Park. That's huge. I can't envision that happening with only $25,000 is my only concern. I think that your idea is great. I think we should include everything, but my worry is that I think the Foothills Park is an additional item other than the parks we already have. That's just my thoughts.
Okay, additional speakers. So Councillor Gusselbrock.
Thank you. My concern is with the mechanism that's embedded in your revised motion? Because I take it we have to first have a vote on whether we're going to reconsider, and then the second vote would be on whether to approve your motion.
So I'll just address that real briefly. So in terms of the reconsidering, there's no vote required. So right now, what has been moved and seconded is an amendment to the main motion, which is already on. So by section 132 of the community charter, as mayor, I have the ability to bring forward a motion for reconsideration, and that's what was on the floor. That's what I read first. And then second was the amendment motion, which was moved and seconded. So we're dealing with the stuff that's under Mayor Swain's recommendation.
Good, thank you for clarifying that for me. So my concern is with the mechanism, because the way I read this is that, and I don't have a problem with the extra 25,000. I don't have a problem with putting this towards all of our parks, because once again, we're going to have the largest accessible park in the whole RDN with the foothills, over 1,000 acres. But it seems to me that when you read it, that nothing can be done, starting with the terms of reference, until residents can access the Pierce Woods Marine Park. And as council knows, that may be, sometime next year. So is it the mayor's intention that nothing will be done until the public can access the Pierce Woods Marine Park?
Through to Councillor Gusbrecht, no, it's not my intent to stall that process. In terms of a lot of this, how council moves forward, regardless, will be determined with the terms of reference. So at that point, things can be adjusted to suit whatever the need of council is at that time. The original motion was worded that way to appease council or to have consent, or not consent, consensus among councillors that nothing would happen until, the public consultation wouldn't happen until people could actually access the property. And that's how we ended up getting basically a unanimous vote on that. So the whole idea here is, again, the Parks Master Plan, terms of reference would really determine how we move forward with the project. And again, with the Pierce Woods Marine Park piece, the consultation piece on, or how we move forward on that will really be determined on when people can start accessing the property. But anyways, I got more to say, but I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so, no, I understand that. So to be perfectly clear, your intent with this motion is that staff would go out and hire a consultant right away and start working on a master plan, despite the fact that there's no public access to Pierce Woods Marine Park. Is that your understanding?
No, that's not my understanding. My understanding is that staff would be coming back to council with the terms of reference on how we would be moving forward with developing our Parks Master Plan, and that would include the piece of hiring the consultant.
Well, then I suggest that you may want to amend the motion, because the way it reads now, pardon me, and I'll just read from the top motion where I've inserted your amendments, and starting with the second phrase, and further that, staff develop a terms of reference, comma, including the public input portion of the consultant's work be done when the public can access the Pierce Woods Marine Park. So my reading of that, the standard English, is that nothing's going to be done until the public can access the park. So if that's not your intention, maybe we can work on an amendment to clarify the motion. I think it's all good, but I don't think it says that right now.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. But I guess what's important is that staff understands the intent of the motion, and I wish the whole motion, as with the amendments included was just all together, but it's not. But through to Director Coates, because I had sent the original motion to you, and then staff provided me with these, with the revised motion for council's consideration, which I said I was okay with. But I think, again, the most important piece is, as Councillor Gesselbrecht is pointing out, would nothing happen until people could actually access the Pierce Woods Marine Park with the whole master plan
Well,
process?
I believe there's a majority of master planning that would occur before the public input portion. Like they have to develop and resource and prepare many things, particularly with an expanded terms of reference. So we understood that the intent was the public input portion wouldn't start until there was public access. But if you want to change that, absolutely, that's council's option. I would think you want to vote on this one and then get it into the motion and then make a further amendment, because we don't go 2 amendments deep.
Yes, and that's how I'd understand it as well. And I guess, again, as long as the intent is not being lost, that's the key thing.
So just to be clear, so the intent is that staff start right away on the terms of reference, come back to council, and so the council can look at it. And the second part is that once the public can access the marine park, that staff get the consultant get public input back from the staff. Is that, so there's like 2 parts to it. Get the terms of reference done, and when we can access the part, then get the public input in front of the consultant to come back to council too.
Yes, and I believe all this stuff would be addressed with respect, or, at the time we go through the terms of reference. But the terms of reference have to be completed before staff will go ahead and engage and hire a consultant regardless. So, and I don't know if within the terms of reference, there would be a timeline that council would, I'd assume, would be approving in terms of when various steps would occur. But this just gets it off the ground. Director Coates?
Yeah, that's correct. I think with major projects, staff have presented council with a timeline, particularly an end date of when you want it completed. If there was major monument steps, those would be identified. And then council can consider that, rearrange it, identify. Like usually for someone to bid on it, they'd need to know how many times they're going to appear before council. They need to know how many, public input sessions. If there's a variety, if we're putting note that we want a variety of public input sessions, if we want design plans done for certain parks. So it would have to be detailed, but not so detailed that they can't, provide a comprehensive submission and show add-ons to what they could bring to the table. Yeah.
Okay.
Your worship, the terms of reference will have all of that, what council wants in them, and that they're coming back to council. So council will get a chance to take a look at them, amend them, change them, or adopt them, whatever the case may be at the time.
Okay. Yeah, and just kind of speaking again to the intent is to basically draw in all our other parks. So we're moving ahead regardless with the Pierce Woods Marine Park, but this is also a good time if we're going to be engaging the public on one park to engage the public on all parks. And again, if we have had a chance to look at the the strategy and the plan that were part of this evening's agenda, then you'd see that we've had lots of consultation in the past in various areas and with respect to parks. And we even have another document on our district website regarding question and answers with respect to the foothills and the key interest points. What I find is that our whole parks and trails documentation and planning is really disjointed. And what I would like to see is that it's just all is brought into the same fold and into one place where we can effectively, so we can use it as an effective tool to actually implement things within the district of Lantzville. So, sorry, I'm taking up a lot of time, but additional speakers on this, and we're on the amendment.
I have something to
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Oh, it's kind of funny. I can barely see the yellow hand, but yeah, I see it now. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
just out of curiosity. I mean, I appreciate the spirit of the motion, but one of the things that just sort of comes to my mind is that the Foothills Park is huge. I think Councillor Gusserock said approximately the size of Stanley Park. To me, a park like that would be taken advantage of by the entire, well, I mean, it'll be a well-known park throughout central Vancouver Island. Is that not something for Lantzville to bear all the cost of designing and putting that park together? Is there not some sort of collaboration, like the regional district? Would they not be involved in funding and paying for the design of that park? I mean, I get Pierce Woods Marine Park is, on our beachfront park that we don't have, and as a district, we want to kind of grab the bull by both horns with respect to that park. I just wonder, and this is maybe a question through you, Mayor, to staff, or perhaps to Mayor Swain, your experience of being on the RDN, and same thing with you, Councillor Gesselbrecht. I guess my question is, wouldn't this be an initiative taken on by the regional district as opposed to something that we try to take on as a cost within Lantzville with Lantzville taxpayers?
Yes, I'll briefly respond to that. I think with respect to the planning process, I think that would all get flushed out at some point anyways. It's, I think it would probably, in terms of a master plan, lay out the groundwork for how is the Foothills going to become a park, and what partnerships could be identified and so forth. And really, that's where the RDN comes into play. Is it's a partnership, and hopefully, down the road, and there'll be lots of competition for regional parks and where they are and where the funding goes for them. But the Foothills would be considered as a regional park for the RDN to put money into. But I do say there is competition for regional parks, not only land acquisition, but also park improvements. So the RDN is just not a bottomless pit of money that municipalities can go to and take money from, or ask to have money from, and put it towards parks improvements. Even with the most recent, Ammonite Falls opening and those improvements, that was significant monies that went into that and so forth. And even the parking lot was a lot of money that the RDN spent. So, but I see the master plan would be addressing the Foothills from maybe a higher level planning perspective, maybe not getting down into a granular process where, we're actually planning out every single bit of work that's going to be going on in that area. I think it'd be maybe a bit more of a higher look at it. So go ahead, Councillor Gusserock. Yeah, I think is that Director Coates? Yeah.
Yes, I was just going to reference for council the your strategic plan that includes achieve a partnership with the regional district of Nanaimo for Foothills Park as a regional park, and consider other options for partnership for components. So the update since the second quarter has said, of last year, has said that the RDN, there had been discussions with the RDN, and they indicated that they preferred that the district transfer the park to them after all of the lands have been acquired, and we wouldn't be acquiring those lands until the next phase.
Okay, Councillor Gusserock.
To confirm what Director Coates has said, this district has only been deeded a certain number of acres, and I believe it's around 700. we're in negotiations, or staff's in negotiations with the owners of Foothills concerning what's going to happen with the rest in terms of a phased development agreement. That may include more acreage. We've heard that over the last few years that, we're looking ultimately at 1,000 to 1,200 acres. But from the RDN's point of view, and this has been brought up, they're not going to touch this until the full park complement has been turned over to the District of Lantzville. As Mayor Swain knows from his participation at the RDN, there's a long list of projects. This particular board at the RDN has been very eager to acquire parkland, but there's the Hamilton Marsh project up by Qualicum that's sitting in the #1 spot. That's a multi-million-dollar project, and there's a list of at least 5 other projects that the various electoral districts as well as municipalities would like to get before the board. So it's a lengthy process, and it's certainly one we should enter into when we know what amount of parkland is deeded to the district.
Okay, Councillor Proctor.
I had it in the back of my mind that we had agreed in our strategic planning that we would partner with the RDN with this, with the Foothills Park. And I'm of two minds. Some days I think we should plan the park in Lantzville and turn the park and the plan over to the RDN. And other times I think that's a big undertaking, and if it's going to be a regional district park, maybe the planning should be undertaken by them too. So I would like to see a piece of that answered in the by the professional writing this report, how best for Lantzville to handle this huge undertaking of a park. And I dare to suggest that $25,000 isn't near enough money to plan that huge park. But like you said, a big overview of future plans for the park might be touched on, broad strokes, by the consultant. Thank you.
Okay, any additional debate or questions, comments regarding the amendment before I call the question? All right, so I'm going to move to call in the question. All those in favor and opposed? And noting Councillor Wilson's opposed, it carries. So now we're back to the main motion as amended. And dare I ask for that to be read back? I think you have it all as one.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I don't, but I've drawn little lines on it.
Okay.
That the 2022 to 2026 financial plan be amended to bring forward the $75,000 budgeted funds for a Pierce Woods Marine Park Master Plan in 2023. Oh, so, yes, in 2023. Then you strike out to be undertaken in 2022. So in 2023, to fund a Parks and Trails Master Plan, including the Pierce Woods Marine Park, and for the works to commence in 2022. And further, that $25,000 from the Community Works Fund gas tax brackets be added to the funding for a Parks and Trails Master Plan in the total amount of $100,000. And further, that staff develop a terms of reference, including the public input portion of the consultant's work to be done when the public can access the Pierce Woods Marine Park property, to come back to council for consideration and for authorization for staff to engage a consultant.
I think that gets it all. Okay, thank you. Additional comments, debate from council? Okay, hearing none, I will then move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, that takes us on to item 12D of our agenda. So this is the Memorial Tree and Bench Program. This is Councillor Savage's recommendation. Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Thank you. That the District of Lantzville Memorial Tree Program and the Memorial Bench Program be suspended until further notice, with the exception of the proposed DeMarcy Memorial Bench application for Rotary Park on Peterson Road, which has already been initiated.
Okay, seconded by Counselor Gusselbreck for discussion. So I'll go to you, the mover, and then the seconder. So go ahead, Counselor Savage.
Yes, thank you. I'll go through this quickly. There's a few things to consider here. First, I fully support memorials and honoring those that have passed away. It's just we need a new approach so more residents can be remembered and our valuable park space can be redesigned as needs change, and it's quite in keeping with what we were just discussing with an overall parks plan. Basically, the problem is once a memorial tree or bench is installed, it's very problematic to move it in the future, and we ran into this with the two trees requested by the Legion to move. And there's a process of trying to contact the family and so on. And when ashes or flowers or other things can be placed around the bench or a tree, so if ashes are there, it makes it even more problematic. So there's a sense of permanence about these. And these sites have the similarity to cemeteries in that they are special places to remember. And as I say, especially if ashes are spread. So if we're creating memorial areas, they should be planned and designed carefully so that disturbing them or moving them in the future can be minimized. And there's a limited, amount of park space. The cement pad under one bench was about 21 square feet, and the gravel around the cement was a total of about 70 square feet. So these do take up space, benches even more so than trees on the ground level. Now, Lantzville doesn't have a cemetery, but having a physical record of those that lived is important for a community. For example, there's many cemeteries that are highly interesting for their historical value, like the little one on Salt Spring and so on. So one solution I will be proposing in the future is memorial posts. Two sides of the post can have artwork, like the two posts at the bus shelter, and two sides can hold dozens of small memorial plaques for anyone who wants to remember a Lance villager who's passed away. And the Historical Society can also be asked to provide some names from the past so that they can be added as plaques as well. And this would greatly expand the number of memorial plaques and offer a chance for the many who have lived here to be remembered and have their place in our history. Such plaques are inexpensive, quite maintenance-free, and could accommodate thousands of residents as the years go by. So it's just giving an example of one of the solutions for solving this problem. There's many, many people I've heard that would like a spot to memorialize or remember someone, but they can be expensive and limited when it's just benches and trees. So, and perhaps there's other solutions we can think of, perhaps places like the Foothills Park for memorial trees. So, but basically we need a more comprehensive plan to accommodate all these residents we'd like to honor. So this motion is just to temporarily suspend the program until we have a more comprehensive program and solutions can be adapted. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Gusselbreck is the seconder.
Thank you. Yes, I'm flattered that Councillor Savage has been such a quick study in picking up on my comments from the last meeting where I proposed that we do need to have a policy. I can support this motion full-heartedly. I think probably the next council can work on a policy making sure that it's Lantzville residents who get the either the turf or the tree. There's a lot of great ideas. I like Councillor Savage's ideas for remembering our dearly departed. For those of you who have been up to the Nanaimo Hornets Rugby Club, you'll see a bench that was made almost 5 years ago now, where numerous plaques have been put on there for our members who have died. It's a great place to sit and contemplate our mortality or to watch a rugby game. So I think this is a good step, and I support it.
Okay, additional speakers on this item? I was just going to point out to council in 2008 Parks and Trails Recreation Plan, they're on page, I think it's 26. You know, there's a under 8.2 that talks about the dedication and memorial program. Outlines a lot of information in there. And the interesting thing about it is it says, you know, when should this be reviewed? And it says every 2 years or as needed. So I think this is probably, you know, I've been on council with Councillor Gusbrecht for a few more years than rest of council, but you know, this is the first time we've really discussed it in a long time. But really, you know, the review is supposed to be regarding the dedication and memorial policies and the location maps on, you know, we should be reviewing those on a regular basis and consider other park or trail infrastructure as potential dedications, memorials, or for sponsorship. And there's more in the plan. I'm not going to read it, but really what it's identifying is that, you know, this should be occurring more frequently. And it's probably due time that we actually have a look at this policy and so forth. So, you know, I understand the intent of the motion is to suspend the program, but what I'd like to see is potentially amendment dealing with, you know, coming forward with reviewing the policy, and I see this as something this council could deal with this term, and rather than putting it off. Our agendas have been rather light in the last while. I know we do have some public hearings coming up, but again, our agendas have been relatively light, and when I'm here, I'd like to do some work. So, okay, I'll pass it off to Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with you, Mayor Swain. I can support this motion as long as it's referred to staff to bring it back to us with a staff report. I don't think that we should suspend the memorial program indefinitely. I've heard some interesting ideas from people in the community, such as we shouldn't allow memorial trees for someone if they're not from Lantzville, and I'm really not sure how we would approach that. Like if I didn't live in Lantzville, but my dad did and he died, or if it was his favorite place when I don't know. That is a lengthy conversation to consider. And I also I don't know if anyone on staff can answer this, but I thought there were laws about where you can sprinkle people's ashes. Can we put ashes in a park, please, Mayor, through you to staff?
The cemetery branch has legislation that regulates where interments and inurnments occur. Clearly, their advice in relation to people putting ashes is that they must have the permission of the property owner. So, to my knowledge, the district has not approved any internment or inurnment of ashes. I had some other comments, but I can make those after you
Thank
finish.
you. I do look forward to hearing your comments. I know it's a touchy issue. I've had lots of relatives that were cremated, and we did various things with various ashes, and there was discussion about what's legal and what's not legal. So I'll just leave that for other people to figure out. I can support this motion if there's a amendment to it that staff comes back to us with a report, because I don't think we should leave this indefinitely. Thank you.
Okay, additional speakers on this? Oh, and then Director Coates, he did say he had some comments.
I do. I just wanted to clarify for the record that when it references the proposed Demars Memorial Bench application, which has already been initiated. For clarity for everybody, the district has not received an application. I understand from the mover that there was discussion within the community from some people that they plan to make an application. But just for clarity, we have not received an application. So that was one thing. The other item was that I wanted, certainly staff have recognized, particularly, and you would probably recall when we were looking at moving trees, the issue at Huddlestone Park, where we no longer allow new tree planting, that we identified then that the wording was poor in the policy, and I think there was one attempt to improve that. Our discussion at a staff level was that when the memorial tree fee bylaw, the miscellaneous fees bylaw amendment would come forward, when that was done, then we would be issuing out an updated application form, and there was discussion about either combining the policy so that it was a trees and bench, and then in our research, our jurisdictional scan of other municipalities and how they handle it, there's a myriad of options, and some of them have changed it to very specific lists of things, and and there's sort of a booklet describing which things. Other ones have just called it amenities, donations, but clearly all of them have set a time limit on them, and that then there's an onus on the person because they're donating something, that if they wish it to be renewed, that after 10 years or 12 years or 15 years, whatever the policy has identified, that they have the first dibs to reapply on it, but that we don't have to track where that applicant is, because that was our problem in the past. Some of the policies are very interesting. They're administrative policies. They are not council policies. And, it's based on some criteria. I assume at some point they must have reviewed it with a council, but a few of them assured me that no, they hadn't. It was simply administrative. Some of them are very clear that it was not intended that they were going to litter their parks or rights of way with tombstones. And so that it's very specific that the message has to be uplifting. They don't want it to be a cemetery. So that's something that would need to be decided. But yeah, so the bottom line message was that staff were already bringing forward an updated report, but this would kind of stop it unless, as you say, you make an amendment to refer it to staff to bring forward a report.
Okay, so I'm going to propose a couple amendments, but we'll have to do them separately because the first one is just to clean up the motion that's in front of us. So I'm going to amend the motion on the floor by striking after bench the word application, and then after the word road, inserting a comma and striking which has already been initiated, period. So striking that. So if I have a seconder, I'll briefly speak to that. Okay, any seconders for that? Okay, thank you. So, all right, so this is just to simply clean up the motion with respect to what staff has informed us with, that there is not an active application in the books at this moment. So it just says, with the exception for the proposed Demars Memorial Bench for Rotary Park on Pearson Road. That is known within the community. I know of it. I've had communications with some of the proponents of it. So I know it's in process. They just haven't made the formal application. So unless there's any further speakers to it, I will call the question on the amendment. Okay, hearing none, call the question. All those in favor and opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, so the second amendment I'll make is after, I guess it would be road now, and further that staff prepare a report regarding the District of Lantzville Memorial Tree and Bench Program for Council's consideration. I'll probably have to read it back though. And further that staff prepare a report regarding the District of Lantzville Memorial Tree and Bench Program for council's consideration. Second by Councilor Proctor. I have nothing to say to that. Councilor Proctor is the seconder. And through the rest of the council, go ahead, Councilor Savage.
Yeah, sorry, I don't think I can agree with this. The idea is to have this more lengthy process to really give thought about memorializing people, remembering them, and just to come up with a report. A report on what? Just to continue along with the benches and the trees. So I think we need a fresh start on looking at the whole thing, and it's a perfect tie-in with our master parks plan, because we have to look at areas where it's not going to be problematic. And if it's just going back to putting them in parks and so on, then we haven't solved anything. So I'd like to see a more fulsome, and I'd also like to see public input on it too. There may be people with other ideas. Those were just a couple of mine that I mentioned. There's probably lots of other ideas. What's the taste in the community for memorials? Where would they like to see them? What form and so on? And where is the key? We just can't have permanent, and even if they're not permanent, people do not want them moved once they're there. They get used to it. I know my father has a paving stone in the Walk of Honor, the Huddlestone Park there, and it's very enjoyable visiting him, as it were, when I'm there. So you get used to these things. I fully understand people's attachment to their memorials. So that's another concept. So I think it's a little premature just for a staff report. I would rather see a more fulsome discussion as part of the master parks plan. As you mentioned, Mayor Swain, it's already in our current parks plan. So I think that would be a little more appropriate. I don't know what staff would do because they don't quite know what we're trying to achieve, nor what the community would like to achieve. That's all. Thank you.
Just as a bit of a follow-up through to you, Councillor Savage. I think that this would be a good starting point, because at least what we'll do and with the staff report is put all the current concerns regarding the current program into one document that council can reference. I think staff has heard enough of the discussion this evening to understand that we need to look at other ways of, and it's already identified in previous plans that, you know, as memorial sites or features are not just limited to trees and benches. It can come in other forms. So I'd be hopeful that, you know, we'd be getting some feedback on what other communities are doing in terms of those items. And then it doesn't stop us from, at a later date, when we go to revising the policy, to add in things like adding, you know, memorial posts and other such items that council or members of this community would think would be appealing, or to memorialize their lost ones. So, or it could be even pets for that matter, right? Their lost pets and so forth. You know, who knows, right? So that is always a possibility. So I just think
Those would have to be dogwood trees, Mayor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I just think it's a good starting point, you know, to just to put the brakes on the program as it stands now, get some information back, and then we can effectively plan based on that staff report. Because again, I do find as we move forward with a lot of things, there's a lot of information out there. It's getting really disjointed, and it'd be nice to bring it all into one consolidated document that we can work from, and the community can look at and work from as well. So those are my thoughts. I'll be supporting the amendment, not because I made it, but just because I think it's the right thing to do. Go ahead, Councilor Proctor.
I'll be supporting this amendment. I think it's a good start. I think if the community had a taste for us to look at further improvement on our memorial program as part of the parks consultation, that would be a great thing to do. I think the parks consultation is going to be a ways off, and I would hate to see this program be be totally suspended until that happens. I think we can deal with it now and then deal with it again during the parks consultation if people have an appetite for that. You never know how many people want memorial stakes.
Okay, so unless there's any further debate, I will call the question on the amendment. Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. So now we're back to the main motion as amended. Unless there's anything further, I will call the question. Okay, hearing or seeing nothing, I will call the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, so that takes us on item 12E. So this is the Village South public hearing. This is Councillor Savage's recommendation. Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. Therefore, be it resolved that council instructs staff to make arrangements to have the public hearing location at Coston Hall for the District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw Number 150, 2019, Amendment Village South Special Area Plan, Bylaw Number 283, 2021, and the District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw 180, 2020, Amendment Village South Special Plan Area Zone, Village South Special Area Plan Zone, Bylaw Number 284, 2021.
Okay, and do we have a seconder to the motion? Okay, I will second it. And through to Councillor Savage for discussion.
Yes, thank you. Basically, things are pretty well back to normal now, so it's appropriate the Village South public hearing is also a normal in-person public hearing at Coston Hall. Hockey games are at 100% in-person capacity now, as are concerts and other public events, and even the requirement for proof of vaccination is proposed to end on April the 8th, which will be well before the public hearing on Village South. And we're now holding in-person council meetings as we are tonight. So it seems natural. The Village South public hearing is also a normal in-person hearing at Coston Hall. And plus, I must point out, it would reduce any potential technical problems like we had tonight, and these technical problems happen. They happen in all municipalities and businesses too. So if you're over-reliant on the technology of a Zoom meeting when you're trying to accommodate so many people, an hour delay or a half-hour delay can be very critical at a public hearing. So it takes the risk out of it as well. So I'll leave my comments on that for now until I hear from others. Thank you.
As a seconder, yeah, I can support this motion. I think it's one of these items with respect to larger public hearing items. The district of Lantzville or the residents of Lantzville have become accustomed to having things done a certain way, and with COVID, obviously that has changed things. But how we are now we're moving out of COVID. I think we can easily go back to what people had become accustomed to, and I think what people still desire to have happen, and that would be having a larger in-person public hearing. For minor public hearing things, I'm not opposed to electronic versions of that and so forth. But with respect to public hearing of this magnitude, I think it's totally in order, and I will be supporting the motion. So through the rest of the council, Councillor Proctor.
I'm curious, I don't understand. Would the motion include that it's a hybrid meeting and people have the opportunity to Zoom in, or that there would only be in person?
Yes, the answer is yes to that if it's possible.
Yes to what?
Yes, the objective would be it would be hybrid, and if that's not possible, then it would be the in-person. But that's the objective, to have it hybrid.
So people would have the opportunity to do either? So I have a question through you, Mayor, to staff. What is the capacity of Costin Hall?
We've been advised that the capacity is 160. The capacity here in the council chambers is a total of 50. So we generally use the rule of thumb of 40. But then, of course, if it's electronic, it's unlimited.
So if we
Yes,
had,
sorry, as a point of privilege, please.
What's your point of privilege?
I
Councillor
believe
Savage?
that's 260. I just read that. So
I can only go on what the representative from Seaside advised the district. And I can report on, the survey that we've done of other municipalities and what they're doing. And I can assure you that there's many places that haven't updated what's electronically reported on their website to what they're actually doing. So, but I can give you an update on what the survey was when you're ready.
I would prefer you would wait until I was finished speaking. You know, at my age, I lose track of thought when I get interrupted. Thank you, Councillor Savage. So 160, and through you, Mayor, to staff, if there's no electronics and more than 160 people want to attend, what happens?
We would need to recess the hearing and see about booking it into like the conference center.
If there is a hybrid meeting, like let's say there was a hybrid meeting up here, and we had more than 40 people want to attend, what would happen?
Well, we publish the notice as we've looked at many other notices from other places, indicating that there's a limit on the seating, encouraging people to come into the chambers for those who cannot access it electronically. And for everyone else, they would need to go and do it electronically.
And is there a limit to how many people could contribute on Zoom?
No, but you have to set it up in advance. There is a cap. 500? Yeah, 500. I was going to say, I've been in meetings where they had to stop it and then restart it and have paid a contract to have a larger. So maybe they had set their limit at 200 or
okay.
300, and then they had to shut it down and restart it to get it up to the 500.
And right now, our cap is 500?
That's correct.
And what would it cost us to move all the electronics to Costin Hall?
It's simply not feasible for us to move our electronics to Costin Hall. Certainly, when we started down this process of going electronic, and that was, we engaged council on those decision points and issued, got the approval for the funding and issued the contracts. We saw phase one as what we started tonight, and phase two as we talked to them, getting the iCompass up and running, but also parallel phase two was the ability to use Costin Hall, if we wish to, as a satellite, which means we would set it up with a screen so people could see and hear, and a laptop so they could come in from that location as a Zoom meeting. So there would still be the Zoom meeting going on. So we were trying to get some prices on doing that with our current provider who did this equipment. And they reminded me that we had told them that that would be a phase two, and we know the challenges we've had in getting the equipment. So we hope that there'd be some basic thing that we could do with just, we can't rely on Wi-Fi. We've had that experience here. You cannot rely on Wi-Fi, so we need to have that. We'd probably want a camera. So there's that. So it's an extended period to get any equipment. So we wouldn't be able to do it through them, but we do have the option of an independent company that we got a price from who would bring in all of their equipment, set it up, be there and operate it. And they have assured us that we could live stream, have it so that it's, people are zooming in, and that we would get, you know, the recording so it would go into our system. And of course, if we move to Costin Hall, we still have to have our crew come in and set up the chairs and tables and all of that sort of stuff.
And what would they charge to bring their own equipment in and set up a meeting like that?
They haven't been and looked at the building, but the estimate they've given us is in the range of $5,000.
Whereas if we had a hybrid meeting here, if people could be in the chambers or could Zoom in,
That's
it
right.
wouldn't cost us any money because we've already upgraded the equipment
that's
to
correct.
accommodate that.
And we certainly, you know, tonight was our test night, and we tried out some things of having 2 meetings before this meeting. And so for a public hearing, certainly that's not something that we would do. We would have those afterwards because it was not an equipment problem, but it was a Vimeo start problem. And just for clarity, staff have already published notice for a public hearing for April 6th, and it's an electronic public hearing. And so we will be doing that from here.
From here.
From here.
But people can, 40 or
people
50
can co-
people could come.
Yeah, 40. Well, it depends. You know, that's why we encourage staff not to be here, to Zoom in, and, but it's up to council, of course, what your preference is. And,
So the fewer people that, the fewer staff and counselors in. The fewer counselors and staff that are in chambers, the more people from the public can be here.
that's correct.
Because we have a limit of 50 people.
That's correct. Of course, we always still have to keep respectful distance from council members, as we've tried to set up here with chairs to see how that works. So these chairs, right now, it's set up for 40. And that, so with 4 members of council and the 2 staff, that takes us almost to our fire capacity.
Right.
And so, yeah, just for clarity, when I say the capacity is 50, you know, that's a posted occupancy load that's determined by the local assistant to the fire commissioner. So it's nothing to do with COVID. There are still people out there who probably would not be comfortable coming here and sitting in chairs shoulder to
This
shoulder.
close.
But particularly because, well, for the hearing on the 6th, it'll still be in place. But as a local government, we're not allowed to ask for evidence of vaccination. Of course, that's going away on the 8th, so.
Apparently, it's going away on the 8th, but the news today is that hospital rates are up and intensive care rates are up in BC, and the BA2 variant has surpassed by far the Omicron variant, and I don't, cases are increasing in Europe, they're increasing in Asia. I think that we would have our heads in the sand if we said that we're through coronavirus. And that's a lot to consider. It's not a simple change. And I think that we need to have a system in place where that everyone that wants to communicate with us about this bylaw can comfortably. I think that that's the important issue before us. And I would like to hear what other councillors have to say about this.
Okay, additional speakers. So, oh, that's your hand up. Do you have?
Well, I did just want to update council on the little jurisdictional scan that we did. And I probably should clarify, because we often refer to it as an electronic meeting and people Zooming in. And we've tried to upsell the fact that you do not need to Zoom in. You can use your phone. But what you do need to do is have somebody who has a computer to register you through Zoom. And then once that happens, then you can, and who has email, then we can email them the information for them to participate by phone. So there's Zoom, there's by phone, there's giving written submissions, or for those who are still comfortable coming into the council chambers, coming into the council chambers. So I know there's been a lot of suggestions that every place has gone back to normal. Unless they're all not updating their information, that's a bit of a myth. I either spoke with or looked at the websites of 18 municipalities on the island, and some of them were very emphatic that they are electronic and they will be staying electronic. particularly when you look at places like the regional district where they have members from all over. So they have a system where the chair is in the boardroom, a few members are attending, a few staff members are attending, and they have a very large public space there. And so for their public hearings, they're electronic. But again, as we do, we always give the public the option to attend at the boardroom or in the council chamber if they don't wish to do that, to do the Zoom or phone in. Now, there's a couple places where they are looking at changing. So Qualicum Beach, they've advertised for a public hearing that's going to be electronic on April 6th. They certainly all their meetings have been electronic, but they are considering a motion to go in person. They're considering that motion, so I can't project what that's going to happen. But they're talking about April 27th. One of their limitations is they never did amend their procedure bylaw to expand the ability for council members to attend electronically. So their procedure bylaw limits it to if it's an emergency or illness, that's their ability to participate electronically. So that's one where it could be changing. Comox, it says that their April 6th public hearing will be in person. Their March 16th meeting on the website, when I looked at the recording, looked as though they were all in the chambers. But their website says that council meetings will be conducted by electronic means, with some members of council participating electronically and limited public attendance. Public can view live stream. And so there's, that usual. And Courtney was attend virtually or in person, live streamed. Now, they did just move to a larger venue. They've moved into the regional district civic room, so they have more space. But it does say on their site that their public hearings will be conducted virtually and live streamed. And Port Alberni is regular in person, but they are severely limited because they did not do any equipment improvements yet. I think it's been ordered, so once the equipment's changed, their process may change. So right now they are doing Zoom electronic meetings for in-camera, and it's in a separate room, and then there's only one microphone, and they have to pass it around and share it. So yeah, there's a few places that they have some limitations. And View Royal, they are doing in person. They say their public space is limited in the chambers, but it's live streamed and the public can participate by phone, email, or drop off written comments. But when you watch the recording, it looks as though staff are in there using Teams. So there are a few different options out there, but definitely North Cowichan, Machosen, Lake Cowichan, even small places, Ladysmith, Highlands, Gibsons, Duncan, Cumberland. City of Nanaimo is like a hybrid. They have a huge facility, but they do allow people to come in electronically. Campbell River's virtual. And then, yeah. So there's a few variations.
Okay, thank you. Through the rest of the council. I just had a quick question with respect to the school. I just recently got an email saying that gym rentals are up or they're now available. So I don't know if that has been recently looked at and for multiple dates. So yeah, go ahead.
Yes, we did speak with the school district. So they have it's not at the school here, but there's a contact that we call at the board office about rentals. And they indicated that Wednesday was not an option, that is blocked out for school events. And you just need to recognize too that if you want to do something so that it's a hybrid meeting, we are limited in that the school we can't have a company come in setting up equipment in their gym while school's still in session, because they have other activities happening. I mean, I guess if we could have timed it for during school break, maybe, but it would be challenging. So because we have our meeting at 6 o'clock, we've got to have somebody there setting up. And that's another piece I don't think I clarified that council has put into their council procedure bylaw that the circumstances for electronic meetings. And it identifies that you can have a full electronic meeting. And in that case, then, the chair is allowed to be coming, electronic also. Or you can have a regular in-person meeting, or when you're having your in-person meeting, if some council members wish to Zoom in, that's their choice. There's requirements within the bylaw of what they must do, that they have to notify the corporate officer. I think they have to notify me at least 4 hours before the meeting. So this discussion point of whether it would be electronic or not is a bit moot, because we have it in the bylaw that council members have a right to make a decision up to 4 hours before a meeting of whether they wish to attend in person or come in electronically. And so we either have to have that meeting in a facility where we have that capability, or we have to hope that someone notifies us in advance and we're able to rent something and have it set up. So that's why, we've gone to the expense of setting it up from here. We were sort of looking at a phase 2 of how we could set it up, as a pilot, as a location people could Zoom from, if we wanted to do something in a larger facility. But in those cases, we still have to have both facilities, and we have to have a corporate officer at each facility. So,
Additional speakers to this item? Okay, Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, it's quite clear the amount of people who want to participate electronically is a very small percent, and those who want to attend in person is a very large number. Proof of this is there was a couple of hundred people who attended the in-person public hearing for the new zoning bylaw. As a matter of fact, they showed up here. There were so many, we had to change venues and all walk over to the Legion upstairs. But the very contentious Clark Med electronic public hearing had about 9 residents that participated electronically. So there's the tail of the tape right there. This evidence shows residents prefer to participate in person by a margin of about 200 to 9. And while we think we may be serving those who would prefer to participate electronically, evidence shows this is, in the past, has been a very low number. So for me, this is how I work, is that when I hear what people want, I work from there and make it happen. But I haven't heard anything here that even considers having an in-person meeting and making it happen. But I just can't see it. The in-person is efficient. Every time I've been to an in-person public hearing, which is the norm for something as big and as important as this, you'll hear speakers 2 minutes, they're in line, one after another. My experience with Zoom is it's highly inefficient. I remember lag times during Clark Med, for example, where it would be 2 or 3 minutes, the amount of time you had to give a person that couldn't be contacted on the phone or whatever. It's just not efficient. So if there's hundreds of people who want to speak, how on earth are you going to get hundreds of people through a Zoom meeting? You're not. And if people want to show up in person in this small chambers here, I certainly want to show up in person. I have every intention of being here in person. I certainly have no intention of staying at home for and listening to people on a matter this important. So what are they going to do? Mill around outside waiting to get into the council chambers? What's the process going to be? We should have a big enough place where people are comfortable inside and operate from there. And if you're setting up a computer at Costin, for example, where people can participate by Zoom, then that's one way to do it. Or you can just do the usual in-person meeting. We've done that at Costin before. So I don't see this as even trying to have an in-person meeting. And I don't see how a Zoom meeting is going to work so people can be heard.
Okay, Councillor Gaspard?
Through you to staff, I didn't hear the cost if we brought in an independent contractor who would set up equipment at Costin Hall for a live meeting, including Zoom, including live streaming. Do you have a cost on that at this point?
We're estimating $5,000 plus a couple $100 for. We're estimating $5,000 plus a couple $100 for staff to set up the room and knock down the room. And just for clarity, the zoning bylaw public hearing was pre-COVID. It was February 2020.
Clark Med, I distinctly recall we didn't have that many people in chambers, but we certainly had a big crowd outside. But let's look at the disadvantages of trying to move the meeting from the chambers to another venue. In chambers, we have 40 seats. We have staff. Council members can come, or they don't have to. They can do it by Zoom. I heard that if there does appear to be the numbers that Councillor Savage is anticipating, that the overflow crowd could appear at Costin Hall and be able to speak electronically to us. Is that correct?
That's if we set up Costin Hall with equipment to do a Zoom input.
Okay, if we do.
Sorry,
So
just as a point of clarification, is that the $5,000 price tag to do that?
No, the $5,000 price tag was for a full meal deal. So they're live streaming, they're Zooming from there, they're giving us a recording to put to the website. If we set it up as a pilot location, we would have to talk to them about what equipment we would need to do that. And then it would run through here.
Well, we've spent a lot of money, it seems to me, here in Lantzville for this new communication system, audio-visual. Now, there's a hiccup tonight, but I see new speakers. I see that it's running very well now. So what are the disadvantages of trying to move it out of Costin Hall? Number one, the cost to the taxpayers, $5,000 to bring in an independent contractor. Additional staff time, setting up chairs, setting up equipment, taking that down. We're not talking one person, we're probably talking a number of persons. What's a major concern to me is that generally the persons that show up are closer to my demographic than my kids. And I'm concerned that we would be putting an older, more vulnerable group of residents at risk of contacting COVID. Now, I mean, it's all great to hear that the restrictions have been taken down, you don't have to wear a mask, places are open, but that's not the information I hear on the news. I hear that Europe, the infections in Europe are rising. The infections in Asia are rising. I just read an article while I was waiting here tonight that Quebec, the infection rate is rising in Quebec, and they're offering a fourth vaccination shot. They're that worried. So to say that whether we bring 40 people here, like if we have 40 people here, I doubt I'll be here. I've had some medical issues. I would prefer to do it by Zoom. There's no problem. Everybody can see me talking. I can see everybody. I can put forward, I can listen to, and basically it's a listening exercise for the public hearing. We're listening. Council members are listening to the public. So I can do that very well from my home. People have options. People can write letters. People can sign petitions. People can Zoom. And if I assume there's a small segment of society that maybe doesn't know how to Zoom, but I bet they have kids who know how to do it. And I bet they could get their children or a friend to call into the district and either be on the telephone or to Zoom from your child or a friend's computer. It's not rocket science. We're into a new age. We're into a new electronic age. We can use that. And that increases the amount of public participation for those who don't want to come down here, those who might feel vulnerable. Why even put them at risk? So there's that uncertainty. We have these hybrid electronic alternatives. Let's use them. Let's not put people at risk. And based on that, I think we can have a very good public hearing and hear everybody. We certainly have a lot of letters already. I understand we're going to have a petition. Council's going to consider all of that. So I can't.
Excuse me, if you can refrain from making comments from the gallery, please.
I note tonight that there's only one person in the audience. This is an open meeting. So that says to me that people are feeling cautious, wary about coming to public meetings. So I unfortunately, I can't support this application. Thank you.
Additional speakers? Director Coates?
Sorry, I was remiss. I did mention that the zoning bylaw was pre-COVID. It was February 2020. But the Dickinson public hearing was September 9th, and the Clark Med was September 28th, 2020. So we were in our infancy of COVID, 6 months in, and certainly for electronic use. And I think we recognized then that there were some people who struggled to understand how to get into a Zoom meeting. I think it's a different day today. And again, we need to upsell for those who are uncomfortable with coming in on Zoom, that they can get somebody to register for them, and then they can come in by phone. And again, we will have 40 seats here, maybe 45, depending how many council members there are. And they can also give written submissions.
Okay. Additional speakers? Actually, I've got a couple of questions, and then we'll go back to you, Councillor Savage. So through to you, Director Coates, on the evening of the public hearing, if we just choose to do it out of chambers and it's a hybrid meeting, and then all of a sudden the gallery is full, we have 40 people here, and then we also have 40 people downstairs that want to come in, how are we going to manage that?
We would have to announce that they need to go to somebody's home or someplace where they can Zoom in. They can register during the meeting. Our preference is they register before the meeting, but they have that ability always to register during the meeting. It would be published with wording. I mean, we're looking at the wording that other places are putting out, and they're putting out things to indicate that they're encouraging people to come in electronically. However, if they're unable to come in electronically, then there's limited seats within the chambers. And just to back it up a bit, the province brought in electronic public hearings. They brought in legislation for that. They encouraged it. They then, following one of the ministers' meetings, put out a letter to us indicating that for electronic public hearings, we did not need to provide a separate space where people could attend, unlike electronic council meetings. So when you hold an electronic council meeting, and I mean fully electronic, council's not in here, we have a duty to make sure that there's a space like this where people can come and they can hear and see if we have that capability. But the ministry sent something out to say definitely for electronic public hearings, we did not need to do that. So we would simply say, this is it. However, we have made a choice to hold our public hearings as part of a council meeting. So we open in a council meeting, we have the public hearing, and then we close in a council meeting. So on that basis, we do, leave it open for people to come in. And when we look at people's notices, or not people's, but other local governments, and we looked at a lot in the last couple of days, they are mostly saying it's electronic. They encourage them to come in electronically. However, the chambers will be open for those who wish to attend. But there's, sometimes some of them are saying register in advance to get a seat. Some are saying there's limited seating. Some don't say anything, but that is the thought that it's important that they understand that if they stay home and watch it electronically or at a friend's, however they want to do it, that there's a greater ability to see and hear everything. If this room is crowded, and, before we did electronic, we would run into that, and there are people standing and, it's crowded, or they've got the doors open and they're in the entrance. It's very difficult to hear. So, best case scenario is for people to come in electronically. One of the notes that I wrote when I was talking to one of the municipalities was that they had no intention of changing from electronic public hearings for two reasons: transparency and convenience. So for people, they're at home, they don't have to do anything to come down. They can just listen to it while they're eating dinner or whatever they want to do, and then they can come in and make comment after they've heard or during the meeting if they wish.
Okay.
And it's transparent, so everybody gets to see.
Any additional comments, questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, comment and a question, please. And it's just simply in a democracy, it's up to residents if they want to appear in person. I'm not hearing any consideration at all for that large group of people that want to. So now with, you'd mentioned before, Director Coates, this idea of having Coston Hall open as a holding place so people could walk up to the computer and speak into it to say their piece. Is that correct? Yeah, and can we still do that?
I've been asked that question already, and what I indicated was that the company that did our setup here, we had talked to them about doing that as a phase 2 for us. And when we talked about doing it on short notice like this, they need to assess whether there's even equipment available for us to do that. What we did not do, we only talked to the other independent company that would come in and do the show, the $5,000 model. We didn't talk to them about just the two pieces, doing the two pieces. I'm sure that we could talk to them and find out. The one thing I didn't want to put any pressure on this discussion, but Council in February passed a motion to have a special meeting on April 13th. And so that is what we've been targeting and continue to target that. It was the deadline to get the public hearing notice to the newspaper is this week. So, we're just pleased council is taking the time to discuss this and hopefully can make a decision so that we can set about doing that. And
Yeah, so anyway, back to the question, at the very least, I'd like to see that so that people who do want to appear in person, who don't want to participate electronically, and there's problems there, which other problems I haven't brought up, but I want to see that at least as a minimum. That can be a holding place so they can simply show up, and it copies that format of them being able to take turns, walk up to the computer, the mic, and so on, and to give their input one after another. And so that's something that would help with the efficiency. But what I don't want is just to have it as a regular, in chambers meeting. It's far too big an event for our village that's being proposed for that. So I don't see what would prevent us from having a holding place at Cawston where it could be set up and just simply would simulate that they would, just like any computer, you set it up and you participate from there. So, and this idea of cost, I don't buy because we just went through a $75,000 without even blinking for a consultant for a 8-acre park. There's a major event in Lantzville's history, so if it costs a few $1,000s for our future, that's just fine with me. So I don't think the money is a consideration. It would be considerably less for that. That's the whole thing at Cawston for $5,000. So what would be the process then, Director Coates, if we wanted to have a holding place at Cawston Hall?
so for clarity, it's not just a holding place. Like, they have to be able to see or hear what's happening in the Zoom meeting. Like, they have to hear the other people who are making comment, whether they're here in person, coming up and making comment, or whether they're Zooming in from another location. So we need the, we already have a screen over there, but we need a secure access to the internet. A Wi-Fi connection won't be sufficient, so we need to get that. We need to have some test things to assure ourselves that connection over there is going to come through our system and be broadcast so that those who are listening can hear it. So it will be a busy day tomorrow, if that's what council's final decision is.
Yeah, I thought I was in the works, though, because we discussed this last week when I was making the motion. You had indicated that was what could happen. Or?
And I have already said that, not to be repetitive, but we did talk to Pacific Audio. They said on this short notice that they could not get us equipment to do that. We waited on some pieces for months to get this piece done. And we'd indicated to them it was a phase 2 after we got this system going. So it was not anything that was ordered in advance. We did not speak to the company we were contracting with about doing just the 2 pieces. So we would need to do that in the morning.
Okay.
So I get a couple other speakers here. So Councillor Proctor and then Councillor Gusselbrecht. Then I get a
Thank
couple
you.
comments and then we'll call the question.
I remember the zoning bylaw in February, I think it was February 2019. And the chambers were full, and we had prearranged to have the upstairs of the Legion ready, and we had a videographer paid for and had that set up and moved over there when the council chambers became full. But my recollection, and I don't know if you could look this up for me on short notice, Director Coates, or not, but my recollection was there were about 100 people there and 20 speakers. And of the 20, some of them spoke 3 times. So of the 105 people that walked down the street to attend the public hearing, less than 15 chose to speak, was my recollection. And then I can't remember, I remember very clearly because of many reasons, but the derogatory comments that were screamed towards me in a megaphone really highlighted it in my memory. The public hearings for Clark and Med, the chair of the meeting didn't hear the derogatory comments and couldn't control them. Were we allowed to have people in council chambers during, or did the people elect to stay in the front of the building? Could they have come up here if they wanted to? I can't remember what the protocol was at the time.
I'd have to open those minutes.
Okay, so that's not important. But we did have people come in on Zoom and we had a crowd out in front. I remember that. So I think that this is an extremely important public hearing. I'm prepared to read all the submissions. I'm prepared to listen to what everyone has to say. And I think we need to figure out a way to hold that in a reasonable way so that everyone feels safe and feels heard. And I didn't feel safe when derogatory comments were screamed at me so loud that my husband could hear them a mile away. So I do have some grave concerns about how we conduct ourselves as a community. And I also have grave concerns that this public hearing is held in a way that everyone participates and that everyone on council is able to hear what everyone has to say. Because it's an incredibly important decision that we need to make collectively as a community with respect for everyone involved. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gesselbach.
Yeah, I think this has been a very, very good discussion here this evening. A lot of points have been raised. I'm not convinced at all that we can set something up in Constant Hall in the time allotted, Wi-Fi connections, et cetera. But I'm going to ask that the question be called here.
Okay. I just had a real brief comment, but if the question's, okay. Yeah, for myself, I'll continue to support this motion. Again, coming back to my original thought, which is this is something our community has become accustomed to when making big decisions in our community. And I know COVID has forced businesses and municipalities to start conducting their business in a different way. However, I don't believe that is the way we should be moving forward on this, and spending $5,000 on this would be worth every single penny. So those are my closing remarks. Unless there's anything further, I will be calling the question.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor Swen, I had one other question for
You
staff.
got like 30 seconds, Councillor
Okay,
Savage,
thank
'cause
you.
you're
So
beyond your-
through to staff, please, if we do this by Zoom and there's still people waiting to speak and we're out of time, could you please tell council the options they have at that point? So in other words, if not everyone has been given a chance to speak, then what are the options at that point, please?
So the chair sets the rules for the public hearing. Past practice has been allowing 3 minutes for each speaker on the first round. So they go through all the first round speakers first, and then go through the second round speakers, and then go through the third round speakers. The process, if council feels they've had enough for that hearing, that they wish to recess to resume at another time, we come into the hearing, staff come into the hearing prepared to provide council with a proposed date, time, place, method, so that they can recess the hearing to resume, giving the date, time, place, and method, so that it doesn't require another public hearing notice. If for some reason it did get adjourned without calling, giving that information, we would need to publish the notice again. The important thing to remember is it's not it's left me, the words left me. It's not one of those things that they do sometimes in the legislature where they get up and speak and speak and speak. It has to be new information. They can't be repetitive. So
Yes,
those
but
are
there's
important
also
things.
the option, is there not, where council cannot call for a continuation, and that's the end of the public hearing, and not everyone will have been
No,
heard,
that's
correct?
not true.
Oh, so what is so if there's people left, there has to be a continuation?
Well, I think, I guess council could do whatever they wish, but staff would recommend that they continue the hearing. And either, I've worked in places where the hearings, went till 1 o'clock in the morning. It's not effective, it's not advisable, but, it can happen. It's more common on things where people haven't had their opportunity to speak, that it would be recessed to resume at another date and time. And just for a reference point, our zoning bylaw, the brand-new zoning bylaw, there were 26 speakers. I didn't finish the count yet, but of those, I think probably 6 had spoken previously. So there weren't that many speakers. Also, the question was asked about the Clark Med. That was during a period of time when the COVID was so bad that we were advised to not have anybody in the chambers. Because when I look at those public hearing minutes, every one of the speakers has a little asterisk beside it, saying that they were speaking electronically.
So, but the question is there legislation which mandates that there has to be a continuation of a public hearing if there's still people waiting to speak?
Public hearings are generally, I shouldn't say regulated, but guided by common law, by past law. So, that's what we're working with. So you don't see a lot of things in the legislation about this must be done or that must be done. But we know that if there's things missing in our public hearing notice, or we know that if people were not given a fair opportunity to speak, that the bylaw could be subject to challenge.
Gotcha.
And we know what challenge means. It means that, people make an application and say they wish to, under the Judicial Review Act, have something challenged. If it gets challenged and it is correctly challenged and the court upholds it, that doesn't mean that the bylaw goes away. It simply means you have to do the process again and do it correctly this time.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to move to calling the question then. So again, I will call the question. So all those in favor and opposed, noting that Councillor Gesselbrecht, Councillor Proctor, and Councillor Wilson opposed, that motion fails. All right, takes us on to item number 13, introduction of late items. Any late items to be introduced? Any notices of motion? And we are finally, any public clarification? Okay. So this is, again, just, I don't have my preamble here, but this is just asking any clarification questions regarding items discussed. It is not to make comments on decisions. So name and address for the record, please.
Warren Griffey, 6995 Lantzwood Avenue, Lantzville, BC. I just wanted to say, today people signed in or got onto their computer, got in and waited, and I guarantee you they left. When I have to sit here and wait and I think a meeting is going on and it's not, then I have a severe concern with that when we have a public hearing coming up. So I'm very concerned about that.
Okay, Mr. Griffey, this is a time for
Okay.
asking clarification questions regarding the business discussed this evening, not to make comment on. So yeah, unless you're coming to a question,
Okay, so
then I'll have to ask you to move on.
so my question would be is in the past we've always had a hearing, and that hearing is allowed for anyone that lives in Lantzville to come up and ask a question or make their comments heard. And when it doesn't happen, you're destroying democracy.
Okay, so Mr. Griffey, again, you're
I'm-
not
I'm
asking
asking a
clarification. I don't hear a question, it's more of a comment. So unless you're asking a question about how did a particular vote go on the agenda this evening, that is what you're limited to.
Well, I'm asking about, okay, so
So the
my,
last
my
motion-
question is, the last motion in which you decided against going to a public hearing in a proper manner, why, I need an explanation why.
So, Mr. Griffey,
Like,
what
I live in- I
excuse me, I'm
live-
speaking,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Griffey, so as the chair.
Yeah.
So you were here for the discussion.
Yeah.
You heard the vote of that, and you now know that there will not be an in-person public hearing for that application. So that's being asked and answered.
Okay,
So unless you have again, a clarification question about the business discussed this evening, which essentially means how did a certain vote go on a particular business item, that is really what you're limited to. Or if there was a technical question about, what did this mean, then we could attempt to explain that to you. But other than that, this
Right.
isn't an open forum for just making comments about the business discussed.
right, okay. I'll leave it at that then. Okay. I'm just really disappointed.
Okay, all right. And there's no additional speakers registered for clarification? No, okay, thank you. So we've made it through our agenda this evening, so I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.